Well, this ought to be interesting. So, hi, this is Neil Palache, a money coach with the Wealth Creator Company for Women. It's 5 o'clock on the west coast of the United States, and I am looking slightly left and looking back to the right because I decided today, as you may have seen on my Facebook post, that I am going to concurrently broadcast on Periscope as I am also broadcasting on Facebook Live. So you will see me on Facebook, and you will see me on Periscope as well. And I'm glad that you're all here. I'm hoping that a lot more people will listen in doing it this way, and we'll see how this all works out. But I'm quite excited about it. So thank you for joining. Thank you for the hearts on Periscope and whatever the equivalent is on Facebook. I've no idea. Maybe it's just hi on Facebook. I've no idea. But it's great to have you here today. And my subject for today, I mentioned on Facebook, is should you pay off your house? And this all came from a discussion that I was having with a friend of mine yesterday about that subject, and the subject of putting money into the principal payments, adding principal to the payment that you make on your mortgage, and whether or not you should do this. And if you've ever listened to any of the, if you will call them pundits, you may have listened to Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman. Those are the couple of main ones, particularly Dave Ramsey. He just simply believes that you should pay off your house. I don't entirely disagree with him, but I did say that on Facebook I take a unique approach, or a different approach, and that is that I just don't think the answer is as simple as that. I think some people should pay off their house and others shouldn't. And a lot of it depends upon your own personality, your spending habits, and what your situation is. But let's just go through this for a minute so that you can understand kind of what this is all about. Excuse me, because one of the things that my friend was thinking when he spoke to me about this yesterday is that when you have a mortgage, when you have a first mortgage, now we're not talking about a home equity line of credit here, because that works differently than a first mortgage. When you get a mortgage, you buy a $500,000 property, you put down 20%, $100,000, and you borrow $400,000. That $400,000 is borrowed at 4% over 30 years, let's just say, fixed interest, 30-year mortgage. You have a payment schedule, and that payment schedule is what it is, and it doesn't change. And so this was kind of new to him in that he thought, well, if I'm putting more principal into my mortgage, aren't I paying less interest? Now, of course, the answer is yes. But when are you paying less interest? Well, you've all probably heard about the idea that if you put principal into your home, your 30-year mortgage will be reduced to 22, 23, 24 years, depending on how much extra principal. So yes, you save interest, but you save interest on the back end. You're not saving interest as you go. In other words, your payment isn't going to change. Now, if you have a home equity line of credit and you're borrowing money and putting money back and borrowing money and putting money back, then yes, the interest will change as you use or not use the money in that home equity line of credit. But as a mortgage, regular, let's say 30-year mortgage, your interest does not change from month to month if you pay down principal. It is going to remain exactly the same. Your regular payment will remain exactly the same, and you're putting extra principal in. So why is this a good thing? Why is this a bad thing? Well, if you're going to stay in your house forever, then maybe it's a good thing. You say, okay, look, I'm going to put money into my principal. I'm going to have my house paid off in 20 years rather than 30 years, and I will save a lot of interest. I will, maybe a six-figure amount of interest that you will not have to pay now in that final 10 years of your mortgage, and that's a good thing. But what have you also done? What you've also done is you have tied up your money. Now, you may be putting money into a 401k plan or an IRA or a savings account, stock and bond, brokerage accounts, wherever you're putting your money. But now you've decided I'm going to put an extra $100, $200, $500 a month into the principal on my home. And you've now tied it up. What is the only way to get that money out? There's two, What are the two only ways to get that money out of the house? Number one, sell the house. Number two, borrow the money. There is no other way to get the money out of the house once you have put it in. So you need to know that it is locked. Now, for some people, this is a forced saving. And I get that. And for those people, that may be a great idea. You are going to put this money in and you can't get it, which essentially means that you probably won't spend it. So here's where it comes down to your personality and your spending habits. If you are a person who, if there is money in the bank, it's burning a hole in your pocket and you're going to go spend it, then maybe you do want to put that principal into the house to stop yourself from doing that, because ultimately you will have a $500,000 paid off home, or whatever it's worth. Hopefully 20 years down the road it's worth a lot more than that. But keep in mind that the appreciation on the property will happen anyway. It will happen whether or not you pay down the principal. So when you put principal payments in, how much are you earning on that money that you're putting in? Zero. You are earning zero on that money. You might say to yourself, well, I am not having to pay all that interest on the back end, and if you're paying 4%, you could arguably say that you're making 4% on the money. But in reality, you are making zero on that money. The appreciation on the home will happen anyway, whether you pay down the money, the loan rather, or not. It doesn't make any difference. So you've got to look at your own situation. Alternatively, you say, well, look, if I was going to pay $500 a month into into principal, and my house was going to be paid off in 20 years instead of 30 years, that's one way. If I put $500 a month into some kind of an investment, mutual funds, annuities, something with a decent yield. I mean, you're not going to go put it in the bank at 0.02%, but something that can make 5, 6, 7% over time with a moderate risk. Now in 20 years, you probably will have more than what it takes to pay off the balance as it will stand in 20 years. And you can look at the schedule, right? You've got a schedule on the 30-year mortgage paperwork. It'll tell you exactly what the balance will be, assuming you don't make any additional principal payments, at the 20-year point. Say, okay, well, at 20 years, I borrowed $400,000, and it's $200,000. And over here, I've got an account that I save money, $500 a month, and it made 6%, and I've got $250,000 over here. Now, I can always take that money and pay off the mortgage if I want to. I can say, here's 200 grand, boom, mortgage extinguished if I want to. But you have choice. You've got the $250,000 in the bank, and you have choice as to whether or not you want to pay off that mortgage. Now again, if you're going to spend that money and not leave that money in the bank, then that's probably not the right thing to do for you. But like this friend that I was talking to yesterday, they are fabulous savers. They're great with their budget, good income earner, and therefore, in his situation, I'd have to say that he's better off putting the money into an account, saving it over time, and deciding down the road, 20 years, okay, he's 45, he'll be 65. Does he want to pay off the mortgage at that point? If he wants to, fine. If he wants to move, fine. But he's got the money over here to do with whatever he wants. And if there is an emergency, he's got access. if you put all that money into the house, you don't have access, or at least not guaranteed access, because if you went to the bank at that point to try to get a home equity line of credit, who knows whether or not you will be able to. Do you have the income? Do you have the credit? Do you have the appraised value of your home? Are the banks offering home equity lines of credit to the degree that you need it at that point? There's a lot of unknowns. So all I'm saying is, don't just assume that it is the best thing to pay off your house. It isn't always the best thing to pay off your house. And I know that there are people that will argue vehemently to pay it off. And I know people that will argue vehemently that you shouldn't ever. Now, in my opinion, I don't think that there is a never ever. Nobody should ever do X. That's a ridiculous statement in most situations. There are some scenarios where, yes, you ought to do that. You ought to pay off your house. You ought not pay off your house. Look at your own individual situation and make that decision. Interest rates, by the way, I know you already know this. I don't sell mortgages, but interest rates right now are particularly good. They've taken a little dip again. I don't know if they're up a little today or not, but I was talking to somebody the other day about a 3.5% 30-year mortgage that was being offered. That's attractive. Could have bumped up to 3.75 or 4 at this point or not. I mean, keep in mind that those rates do change quite often from day to day and are dependent upon what's going on mostly in the bond market, and sometimes it can be indirectly affected by the stock market. So I would say to you, look, when it comes to paying off a house, don't just listen to these guys on a radio and say, oh, I'm going to do this, because you end up with $500,000 or $1 million that is stuck in a house. And how do you get it out if you need it? So keep that in mind whenever you're thinking about it. Think about the future. Think about having that $500,000 or $1 million home paid off, all of that equity sitting there, and you don't quite have enough money to live on, and you want to get money out. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. So maybe in some cases you ought to consider putting that extra principal money in the bank, in a brokerage account, in some other alternative investment that may not only make more money, but will have the liquidity and flexibility that you may need at some point in the future. Well, that's it for today. Hey, if you have a moment to go to my website at thewealthcreatorcompany.com, spell that all out, thewealthcreatorcompany.com. Sign up for our weekly notifications, sometimes a little more than weekly, but nevertheless, you'll get a nice weekly tip at minimum. Also, sign up as a Facebook friend if you are only a Periscope friend, and sign up for a Periscope friend if you are only a Facebook friend. So do those things, and we'll be here every week at 5 o'clock. Other than on holidays, and I hope that you have a fantastic week. If you're in Southern California, oh my goodness, drink water, wear a hat, wear sunscreen, and stay indoors. It's 100 and some degrees where I am. I think 103 right now, and in the San Fernando Valley, I think it's 10 degrees hotter than that. Wow. All right, guys, take care, have a great week, and I will see you next Monday. Ciao for now.